The previous nanny passed Serena on the front steps, running at full speed. No coat, no bag, just pure, primal flight. Serena caught a glimpse of her face. Terror mixed with something that looked like betrayal, as if she'd been promised a job and delivered to a natural disaster instead. "Don't!" the woman gasped, not even stopping. "Don't go in there. Those children are—" But she was already gone, disappearing into the rain-soaked driveway. Serena Valenti adjusted her jacket and rang the doorbell anyway. She'd heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. The Rinaldi Quadruplets were legend in the childcare community. 4 6-year-old boys who'd broken every nanny in the city. They didn't just misbehave. They strategized. They coordinated. They destroyed with precision. One agency had labeled them a collective behavioral anomaly. Another simply wrote, "Do not engage." But Serena wasn't there for the children's sake. "Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are watching from." Through the ornate window, she could see the carnage. Breakfast cereal raining from the ceiling, juice pooling on Italian marble, 4 boys in matching red pajamas conducting an orchestra of chaos. And in the corner, a man, dark suit, darker eyes, wine glass raised in what looked like a toast to his own defeat. Vittorio Rinaldi, Mafia boss, widower, father to the most feared children in New York. Serena's phone buzzed. A text from her lawyer. Custody hearing moved up. 2 weeks. Be ready. 2 weeks. That's how long she had to prove she could provide a stable home for Lucia. How long she had to scrape together first month's rent, security deposit, and enough in the bank to convince a judge she wasn't drowning. The door opened. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform looked her up and down with something between pity and respect. "You're the new one?" "I'm Serena Valenti. The test starts at dinner, if you make it that long." The woman stepped aside. "Most don't make it past lunch." Serena walked inside, her worn shoes squeaking against marble that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Somewhere ahead, glass shattered. A child laughed. Another screamed in delight. She wasn't here to win. She was here to survive long enough to save her daughter. That would have to be enough. The housekeeper led Serena through a maze of hallways that smelled like old money and recent destruction. Oil paintings in gilded frames hung at perfect intervals, watching her pass with the judgment of dead ancestors. The marble floors were spotless. Clearly, the chaos was contained to specific zones. Strategic warfare, not random vandalism. They turned a corner, and the sounds grew louder. Laughter that bordered on maniacal. The crash of something expensive meeting something harder. A shriek of pure, unfiltered joy that made Serena's teaching instincts kick in. That was the sound of a child who'd never been told no, and meant it. The housekeeper stopped at a doorway, her hand on the frame like she was bracing herself. "God be with you," she said, and it didn't sound like a pleasantry. It sounded like a genuine prayer. Then she stepped aside, and Serena saw the kitchen. It was beautiful. In the way a hurricane photograph is beautiful, you can appreciate the architecture even as you recognize the devastation. White cabinets that probably cost more than a car. Marble countertops the color of storm clouds. Pendant lights hanging like crystal weapons. And in the center of it all, 4 boys in matching red pajamas conducting a symphony of destruction. One was standing on the kitchen island, pouring orange juice from a height that suggested he understood physics and chose chaos anyway. Another was beneath the table, apparently constructing a fort out of cereal boxes, while systematically removing their contents onto the floor. The third had discovered that butter, when applied to the lower cabinets, created an excellent slip-and-slide effect. And the fourth, the smallest, with curls that fell into his eyes, sat cross-legged in the corner, watching everything with the quiet intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. And there, leaning against the far counter, with a wine glass in his hand and murder in his eyes, was Vittorio Rinaldi. He looked exactly like his photographs, except worse. The photos captured the sharp lines of his jaw, the expensive cut of his suit, the dark hair that probably required a stylist's regular attention. What they didn't capture was the exhaustion, the defeat, the look of a man who'd won every battle in his life except the one happening in his own kitchen. His gaze cut to Serena, and she felt the weight of it. This was a man who could make people disappear with a phone call, who commanded respect through fear and reputation, and probably a few well-placed bodies. But right now, he just looked like a tired father who'd run out of options. "You're the new one." It wasn't a question. His voice was dark, smooth, with an accent that suggested old-world money and new-world violence. "Serena Valenti." "I don't care." He took a long sip of wine, never breaking eye contact. "I don't care about your credentials. I don't care about your references. I don't care about whatever heartwarming philosophy you learned in whatever overpriced college program convinced you that children just need understanding and patience." One of the boys, the one on the island, chose that moment to dump the entire carton of orange juice directly onto the floor. It spread across the marble like a slow-motion flood. None of the children reacted. This was apparently normal. Vittorio didn't even look. The rules are simple. If you can get them to sit down and eat actual food, not cereal, not snacks, actual dinner, before 8 p.m. you're hired, full salary, benefits, room and board if you want it. If you can't, he gestured toward the chaos with his wine glass, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Serena looked at the kitchen, at the juice pooling around her worn shoes, at the butter smeared on surfaces that probably required special cleaning products, at the 4 boys who were now watching her with the focused attention of predators sizing up prey. The one under the table emerged, cereal stuck to his hair. He grinned, and it was all teeth and challenge. "The last one cried," he announced proudly. "She cried so hard she couldn't breathe right." "Marco," Vittorio said, his voice carrying a warning that would have made grown men flinch. The boy just shrugged and disappeared back under the table. Serena set her bag down carefully on the only clean surface she could find, a small section of counter near the door. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing the cheap watch she'd bought at a discount store because her ex had taken the nice one. 6:47 p.m. 73 minutes to save her daughter's future. "Where do you keep the knives?" she asked. Vittorio's eyebrow raised, the first hint of something that might have been interest. "Why?" "Because," Serena said, walking directly through the orange juice toward the refrigerator, "if I'm going to feed 4 boys actual dinner in 73 minutes, I'm going to need to cook." Serena opened the refrigerator and took inventory like she was planning a military operation. Eggs, butter, parmesan, heavy cream. Pasta in the pantry, probably. Garlic, bread. The ingredients for something simple, fast, and impossible to resist if you were 6 years old and running on pure sugar and adrenaline. She pulled out what she needed and turned to find Marco standing directly behind her, arms crossed. He was the tallest, with sharp eyes that calculated angles like a tiny architect of chaos, the leader, the one who'd called the shots on every nanny before her. "You're not allowed to use the stove," he announced. Serena stepped around him and set the ingredients on the counter. "Says who?" "Says me." He moved to block her path to the stovetop, his three brothers materializing behind him like a well-trained unit. The butter slider, blonde with a wild grin that promised escalation, positioned himself near the cabinets. The one who'd been pouring juice now held a bag of flour like a weapon, and the quiet one, the observer, simply watched from his corner with those dark, calculating eyes. "You know what the last Nanny did?" the blonde one asked. This had to be Nico, the rebel, the one who pushed boundaries just to watch them break. "She tried to bribe us with candy. Didn't work." He reached into the fruit bowl and pulled out an apple, testing its weight. Measuring distance. Serena found the cutting board, found a knife that probably cost more than her security deposit, and started washing the fruit she'd brought. Oranges, apples, strawberries. Her hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 7 years making meals stretch, making dollars perform miracles, making do. "You should probably leave," Marco continued, his voice carrying an edge of something that might have been concern under all that bravado. "You seem nice. The nice ones always cry the hardest." The apple flew past Serena's head, close enough that she felt the air displacement. It splattered against the backsplash behind her, sending chunks across the pristine white tile. She didn't flinch, didn't turn, just kept slicing the orange in her hand into perfect wheels, each cut precise and measured. Nico grabbed another apple. "Nico." Vittorio's voice came from his position against the far wall, low and dangerous. "Enough." "She doesn't care, Papa," Nico said, but there was confusion in his voice now, uncertainty. "Why doesn't she care?" Serena arranged the orange wheels on a plate, their bright color stark against the white ceramic. She moved to the stove, Marco still blocking her path, and simply waited. 5 seconds. 10. The boy's certainty wavered. He stepped aside, just slightly, and she slipped past him to turn on the burner. "You're supposed to yell," the third boy said. The one who'd been building the cereal fort, now standing with cardboard armor still attached to his chest with what looked like an entire roll of tape. Alessandro had to be. The thinker. The one who understood patterns and tried to make sense of chaos. "Everyone yells." Serena filled a pot with water, added salt, set it to boil. Her movements were unhurried, almost meditative. She could feel them watching her now, their coordinated assault faltering in the face of her complete lack of reaction. Marco tried a different tactic. He climbed onto the counter, the actual counter, his shoes leaving prints on marble that probably cost more than Serena's entire apartment, and positioned himself between her and the pantry. "You can't get the pasta." She looked up at him. Really looked, saw a 6-year-old boy with his father's sharp features and his mother's ghost in his eyes. A boy who'd learned that chaos was control, that destruction was power, that if you broke people first, they couldn't break you. "You're right," she said simply, and went back to slicing strawberries. The confusion was spreading. The boys exchanged glances, their unspoken communication breaking down. This wasn't how the game worked. She was supposed to engage, to fight back, to try to establish authority and fail. Nico threw another piece of fruit, a banana this time, overripe and soft. It hit Serena's shoulder, leaving a smear across her cheap blazer. She brushed it off with one hand, never stopping her work. Strawberries into perfect quarters. Then she started on the apples, coring them with efficient precision. "Why isn't she yelling?" Alessandro whispered. But in the stunned silence of the kitchen, everyone heard it. "Because yelling means I care what you do," Serena said quietly, her knife moving in steady rhythm. "And right now, I only care about one thing: making dinner. You can help, or you can throw things, or you can stand on the furniture. Doesn't change what I'm doing." The water began to boil. Marco was still on the counter, but his certainty was crumbling. Serena walked past him to the pantry. He didn't stop her, and found the pasta. Spaghetti. Perfect. She dropped the pasta into the boiling water, stirred once, and turned to crack eggs into a bowl. The kitchen was quieter now. Not silent. There was still cereal on the floor, still butter on the cabinets, still the wreckage of their earlier assault. But the energy had shifted. Nico lowered his arm, the next projectile forgotten in his hand, and in the corner, the smallest boy, Tommaso, the silent one, stood up and took 3 steps closer, watching Serena's hands move with something that might have been curiosity. Vittorio hadn't moved from his position against the wall, but when Serena glanced up, she caught the smallest shift in his expression. Not quite approval. Not yet. But interest. 7:23 p.m. 37 minutes left. Tommaso moved like a ghost, each step deliberate and silent, while his brothers had orchestrated chaos with the confidence of generals. He'd been mapping it from the shadows, watching, learning, understanding that observation was its own form of power. Serena saw him approaching from the corner of her eye. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him directly. That would spook him. Instead, she continued whisking eggs and cream together, the fork making soft scraping sounds against the bowl. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see, but far enough to run if needed. "The pattern's interesting," Serena said quietly, speaking to the bowl rather than to him. 3 loud ones creating distraction, 1 quiet one watching to see what works. Smart strategy. Tommaso's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever named it before. No one had ever seen. "They think I'm shy," he whispered, his voice so soft she had to strain to hear it over the sound of boiling water. "I'm not shy, I know." Serena grated Parmesan, the sharp smell filling the space between them. "Shy means scared. You're not scared. You're careful. There's a difference." Behind them, Marco had finally climbed down from the counter. Alessandro was trying to reconstruct his cereal fort, but with less conviction. Nico stood by the window, still holding fruit he'd forgotten to throw, watching this new development with suspicion. "What are you making?" Tommaso asked. "Carbonara. You know it." He nodded. "Mama used to make it. Before." The word hung in the air, heavy with everything it didn't say. Serena's hands paused for just a fraction of a second, then continued, steady and sure. "My mama made it too. Taught me the secret." "What secret?" "That you can't rush it. If you rush, the eggs scramble. If you're patient, they turn into silk." She drained the pasta, the steam rising between them like a curtain. "Want to help?" Tommaso looked back at his brothers. Marco was watching now, his leader's authority challenged by this small defection. Alessandro had abandoned his fort entirely, drifting closer. Even Nico had turned from the window. "They'll say I'm a traitor," Tommaso said. "Maybe." Serena met his eyes directly for the first time. Or maybe they're just waiting to see if it's safe. She held out the wooden spoon. An offering? A choice. Tommaso took it. "Okay," Serena said, positioning him in front of the bowl. "When I pour the pasta in, you stir. Keep it moving so the heat distributes evenly. Can you do that?" He nodded, gripping the spoon with both hands like it mattered, like he'd been given something important. She dumped the hot pasta into the egg mixture, and Tommaso stirred with intense concentration. Serena added the pancetta she'd crisped while they weren't looking, the parmesan, a crack of black pepper. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and pork fat and cheese, the smell of comfort, of home, of someone caring enough to feed you properly. "That's perfect," Serena said, and meant it. Tommaso looked up at her with something like wonder. Marco appeared at his brother's elbow, trying to maintain authority while clearly being drawn by curiosity and hunger. "What's he doing?" "Cooking," Serena said simply. She pulled out plates, real plates, not the plastic ones the other nannies had probably used, and started serving. "Alessandro, can you grab forks?" "Marco, napkins are probably in that drawer." "Nico, I need 4 glasses for water." She was giving orders like they were normal requests, like she expected compliance rather than combat, and somehow, impossibly, they moved. Alessandro found forks. Marco pulled out napkins, though he did it with theatrical reluctance. Nico filled glasses, testing whether she'd react to him filling them too full. She didn't. Serena set the plates on the kitchen table, the same table that had been a war zone 20 minutes ago. She didn't clean the cereal off the floor first, didn't wipe down the butter. Just cleared a space and put down food. "Sit," she said. "You can't tell us what to—" Marco started. "I'm not telling you. I'm inviting you." Serena pulled out a chair and sat down herself, twirling pasta onto her fork. "You can eat or not eat. Your choice. But the food's here. It's hot. And it's 7:42. Make it before 8 p.m. I'm hired. Don't make it. I leave. Either way, I'm having dinner." She took a bite, closing her eyes briefly. Perfect. Her mother's recipe, executed in a stranger's kitchen under the eyes of 4 boys who'd been trained to destroy. Tommaso sat down first, picked up his fork, took a bite. Then Alessandro. Then, after a long moment of internal struggle, Marco. Nico remained standing, arms crossed, the last holdout. "This is stupid." "Probably," Serena agreed. "But it tastes good." 7:49 p.m., 11 minutes to spare. Nico sat. The kitchen fell into a silence that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with 4 hungry boys eating real food for the first time in weeks. Serena heard the scrape of forks against plates, the sound of chewing. Alessandro reached for seconds. Marco didn't protest when Tommaso took the last piece of bread. Vittorio Rinaldi pushed off from the wall where he'd been standing for the past hour. He walked to the table, his footsteps deliberate against the ruined floor. He looked at his sons, actually eating, actually sitting, actually still, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite vulnerability, not quite hope, but close. He looked at Serena, and for the first time since she'd entered his home, she saw him really see her. "You're hired," he said. "Full salary, room and board. You start tomorrow." "I start now," Serena corrected quietly. "These dishes aren't going to wash themselves." The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. "Welcome to the Rinaldi family, Ms. Valenti." Lucia Valenti clutched her stuffed rabbit like it was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly tilted sideways. She stood in the foyer of the Rinaldi estate, bigger than her entire apartment building, shinier than anything she'd ever seen, and tried very hard not to cry. Her mother's hand was warm on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, baby." But Lucia had heard those words before, right before they'd lost the apartment on Delancey. Right before Daddy had stopped coming to pick her up. Right before everything that was supposed to be permanent turned out to be temporary. "They're going to hate me," Lucia whispered. Before Serena could respond, a crash echoed from somewhere deep in the house, followed by laughter that sounded like a pack of wolves had been set loose in a china shop. Lucia flinched, pressing closer to her mother's leg. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who'd helped Serena move her 3 boxes of belongings into a bedroom that had its own bathroom, appeared in the hallway. "The boys know you're here," she said to Serena, not unkindly. "They're expressing their feelings about it." "Of course they are." Serena knelt down to Lucia's level, brushing dark hair back from her daughter's face. "Remember what we talked about? How this is temporary until we get our own place?" Lucia nodded, but her grip on the rabbit tightened. "And remember how Mama's going to be working here, which means we get to be together every day instead of you staying with Mrs. Rodriguez." Another nod, smaller this time. Serena kissed her forehead. "I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" "I don't want to be brave," Lucia said, her voice cracking. "I want to go home." "I know, baby. I know." The sound of running feet, multiple pairs moving fast, made Lucia press herself behind her mother entirely. 3 boys in matching shirts rounded the corner at full speed, saw the strangers in their foyer, and skidded to a halt. Marco assessed Lucia with the tactical precision of a field commander evaluating a potential threat. Nico grinned like he'd just found a new toy to take apart. And Tommaso, hanging back as always, simply stared with those quiet, knowing eyes. "Is that the daughter?" Marco asked, directing the question to Serena but never looking away from Lucia. "This is Lucia. Lucia, these are 3 of the boys I told you about. Marco, Nico, and Tommaso. Where's the other one?" Lucia's voice was barely audible. "Alessandro's in the library," Tommaso said softly. "Reading?" Nico stepped forward, and Lucia shrank back. "Does she talk?" "She talks when she has something to say," Serena said, her voice carrying a warning that even a 6-year-old could read. "Just like some people should." Marco circled slightly, trying to get a better angle. "She's smaller than us." "She's 7, Serena said. "Same as you." "We're bigger," Marco countered, as if size determined hierarchy in all things. "Congratulations." Serena stood, placing herself between Lucia and the boys without making it obvious. "Lucia and I are going to get settled in our room now. You 3 are going to give us space to do that." "Understood." "Papa didn't say we had to. I'm saying you have to." Serena met Marco's eyes with the same calm intensity she'd used during the dinner challenge. "And if I find out any of you scared her on purpose, there will be consequences. Clear?" Marco's jaw set, but he nodded. The 3 boys dispersed, though Nico looked back twice, his curiosity clearly unsatisfied. Serena led Lucia upstairs to a bedroom that was easily 3 times the size of the space they'd shared in their old apartment. Someone, probably Mrs. Chen, had made up the second bed with fresh sheets and left a vase of flowers on the dresser. Lucia sat on the bed, still clutching her rabbit, and finally let the tears come. "They're mean." "They're scared," Serena corrected gently, sitting beside her. "Their mama died. Their papa doesn't know how to be soft with them anymore. And now 2 strangers have moved into their house. How would you feel?" "I'd still be mean," Lucia sniffled. "Probably." Serena pulled her close. "But you'd have reasons for it. Just like they do." They spent the next hour unpacking Lucia's things, her clothes, her books, her collection of smooth stones from the park. Serena was hanging the last dress when a soft knock made them both freeze. "It's open," Serena called. The door cracked, and Alessandro slipped through like he was entering a library rather than a bedroom. He was smaller than his brothers, with thoughtful eyes and hands that moved carefully, like he was always afraid of breaking something. He looked at Lucia, who'd gone statue still on her bed. Then he held out the book he'd been carrying. "I heard you're 7, he said quietly. "This one's good for 7. It has pictures, but also real words. Not baby words." Lucia stared at the book, something about dragons and hidden kingdoms, like it might bite her. You don't have to, Alessandro continued. But there's a reading nook in the library, on the 3rd floor. It has a window seat and nobody bothers you there. I go sometimes when Marco and Nico are being loud. He paused. Which is always. The smallest smile ghosted across Lucia's face. Alessandro set the book on her bed, gave a small nod, and slipped back out as quietly as he'd entered. Serena watched her daughter reach for the book with tentative fingers, opening to the first page, where a dragon spread its wings across an illustrated sky. "Mama," Lucia said softly. "Yeah, baby? Maybe it won't be completely terrible here." "Maybe not," Serena agreed, and let herself hope. It was past midnight when Serena finally made her way down to the kitchen. Lucia had been restless, plagued by nightmares in the unfamiliar bed, and it had taken 3 stories and 40 minutes of back rubbing before she'd finally settled into sleep. Now Serena's body ached with the particular exhaustion of someone who'd been holding tension in their shoulders for so long they'd forgotten what relaxed felt like. The estate was different at night. The daytime chaos had been replaced by something heavier, silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Her footsteps echoed against marble as she navigated hallways she was still learning, following the mental map she'd been constructing over the past 3 days. She found the kitchen pristine. Mrs. Chen's work, probably, erasing all evidence of the boys' daily destruction. Serena opened the refrigerator, hunting for the chamomile tea she'd bought on her one brief trip to the store, and found herself humming without thinking about it. The melody was old, something her grandmother had taught her mother, who'd taught her. A lullaby in Italian that she'd sung to Lucia since infancy. The words came automatically, muscle memory in her throat, as she filled the kettle and set it on the stove. "Stella, Stellina, la notte si avvicina." She didn't hear him enter. Didn't know she had an audience until his voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Stop!" Serena spun, her heart lurching into her throat. Vittorio stood in the doorway, still dressed despite the hour, his shirt sleeves rolled up and his expression twisted into something that looked like pain, masquerading as rage. "Mr. Rinaldi, How do you know that song?" His voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence in men who knew how to wield it. Serena's mind raced, cataloguing the distance to the door, the weight of the kettle if she needed a weapon, the location of her phone. "My grandmother taught it to me. It's just a lullaby. I didn't—" "That was Beatrice's song." He moved into the kitchen, and Serena forced herself not to step back. She sang it to them every night, every single night until... He stopped, his jaw working like he was physically trying to contain words that wanted to escape. Understanding crashed over her. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Where did you hear it?" The question came out harsh, accusatory. "Did Mrs. Chen tell you? Did someone brief you on my wife's routines so you could—" "What? Manipulate me?" "Manipulate them?" "No." Serena kept her voice level despite her racing pulse. "It's a common lullaby. My nonna sang it to my mother in Naples. My mother sang it to me in Brooklyn. I sing it to Lucia when she can't sleep. That's all it is." "That's all?" Vittorio laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You come into my home, you sing my dead wife's song to my sons." "I sang it to my daughter," Serena interrupted, finding her spine. "In our room. I didn't know anyone could hear me, and I certainly didn't know it would hurt you. But I'm not going to apologize for comforting my child." The kettle began to whistle, shrill and insistent. Neither of them moved. "She had a voice like yours," Vittorio said, finally, quietly. The anger was draining out of him, leaving behind something more dangerous, grief, raw and unprocessed. Same tone, same softness. Serena turned off the burner. The sudden silence felt louder than the whistle had been. She pulled down 2 mugs without asking permission, made 2 cups of tea and set one in front of him. "I'm not trying to replace her," she said. "I couldn't if I wanted to." Vittorio stared at the tea like he'd never seen such a thing before. Then, slowly, he pulled out a chair and sat. The gesture was so unexpected, so human, that Serena found herself sitting across from him before she'd consciously decided to. 3 years, he said. 3 years, and I still hear her voice in the hallways. Still wake up thinking she's in the shower. Still set out her coffee mug sometimes before I remember. He wrapped his hands around the tea, but didn't drink. The boys were 3 when she died. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light downtown. "I'm sorry," Serena said, and meant it. They barely remember her now. Alessandro sometimes. He'll say something about Mama's song or Mama's cookies, but the details are fading. And I don't know. His voice cracked. I don't know how to be both parents. I don't know how to run an empire and make them lunch. I don't know how to keep them safe and let them be children. Every nanny I hired, I wanted them to fail, because if they succeeded, it meant Beatrice was replaceable, that we could just move on. "You can't move on from grief," Serena said softly. "You can only move forward with it." Vittorio finally looked at her, really looked at her. "Your ex-husband, Lucia's father. Left when she was 4, found someone younger, someone without complications. Wanted a fresh start. The old wound still ached, but distantly now. He fights me for custody, not because he wants her, but because he doesn't want to pay support. His lawyer's better than mine. I'm always one misstep away from losing her. Is that why you're here? The money? Yes. No point in lying. I need to prove I can provide stability, a safe home, consistent income, everything I haven't been able to give her since he left." She met his eyes. "But the money's not why I stay for dinner when I could clock out. It's not why I check on Tommaso's nightmares, or why I make sure Marco eats vegetables. I'm here because I need the job. I stay because those boys deserve better than they've been getting. And what have they been getting? Employees, not caregivers." Serena took a sip of her tea. "You hired people to manage a problem, not to love your children. And you think you can love them?" There was challenge in his voice, but also something else. Hope, maybe, buried deep. "I think I already do," Serena said. "Not the same way I love Lucia, but enough to care when they're hurting, enough to teach them that adults don't leave just because things get hard." Vittorio was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his tea and took a drink. "Teach me." "What?" "The song. The whole thing." He looked away, jaw tight with the effort of asking. "I want to be able to sing it to them, the way Beatrice did, the way you do." Serena felt something shift in her chest. This dangerous man, this Mafia boss who could probably kill someone without raising his heart rate, was asking her to teach him a lullaby. "Okay," she said softly, "but not tonight. Tonight you just listen." And there in the clean kitchen, past midnight, Serena sang the lullaby again. All the verses this time, her voice carrying through the empty spaces of a house that was learning, slowly, what it meant to be a home. When she finished, Vittorio's eyes were wet. "Thank you," he said. "Any time," Serena replied, and discovered she meant that too. Mr. Hargreaves arrived at precisely 9 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, carrying a worn leather satchel and the kind of gentle smile that belonged in children's literature. He'd been with the family since before Beatrice died, teaching the boys French and mathematics with patience that seemed inexhaustible. Even Marco, who tested every adult's boundaries like he was searching for structural weaknesses, behaved during Mr. Hargreaves's lessons. Serena first noticed something off during her second week, when she was collecting the boys' lunch dishes from the dining room they used for lessons. "Ah, Serena," Mr. Hargreaves said, his British accent making her name sound elegant. "Settling in well, I hope?" "As well as can be expected, with 4 boys who think breakfast is a contact sport." He chuckled, closing the French textbook in front of Alessandro. "They are spirited, aren't they? Though I must say, you've worked miracles. I haven't seen them this manageable in quite some time." He adjusted his reading glasses. "The household staff must be relieved as well. How many guards are on rotation these days? I used to see the same 3 faces, but there seem to be more now." The question landed oddly, like a note played just slightly off-key. "I'm not sure," Serena said. "Security isn't really my department." Of course, just making conversation." He turned back to the boys. "Now then, who can tell me the past tense of Allah?" Serena carried the dishes to the kitchen, but the question nagged at her. Why would a tutor care about guard rotations? 3 days later, he asked again. This time, Serena was helping Lucia with homework in the library, while Mr. Hargreaves prepared materials at the main table. The boys were outside with Vittorio, attempting to learn soccer in the courtyard, or more accurately, attempting to turn soccer into gladiatorial combat. "Serena, forgive me for asking, but have you noticed if the security protocols have changed recently?" Mr. Hargreaves didn't look up from his papers. "I had to wait an extra few minutes at the gate yesterday. New procedures, perhaps?" "I wouldn't know," Serena said, watching him carefully now. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just curious. One gets used to routines at my age." He smiled that gentle smile again. "And with Mr. Rinaldi's business interests, I imagine security is quite important." There it was again, that slightly wrong note. That evening, after the boys were in bed, Serena found Vittorio in his study. He looked up from a stack of papers that she suspected had nothing to do with legitimate business, his expression softening slightly when he saw her. They'd developed something over the past 2 weeks. Not quite friendship, not quite partnership, but something that existed in the space between employer and employee. Late-night conversations, shared glances when Marco was being particularly dramatic, a growing trust that neither of them had explicitly acknowledged. "Mr. Hargreaves has been asking me questions," Serena said, closing the door behind her. Vittorio set down his pen. "What kind of questions?" "About security, guard rotations, gate procedures." She moved closer to his desk. Twice this week, and it felt deliberate, like he was fishing for information. "Hargreaves has been with this family for 5 years." Vittorio's voice carried the weight of certainty. He was Beatrice's choice. She trusted him completely. "I'm not saying he's an old man who teaches French to children." Vittorio picked up his pen again, a clear dismissal. "You're reading too much into polite conversation." "Am I?" Serena didn't move. "Because in my experience, people who ask casual questions about security aren't being casual at all." "In your experience?" There was an edge to his voice now. "You've been here 2 weeks, Serena. Hargreaves has been here 5 years. Through Beatrice's death. Through the boy's worst periods. Through—" He stopped himself. "His family. Family can betray you." She thought of her ex-husband, of promises broken and trust weaponized. Sometimes they're the most dangerous because you never see it coming. Vittorio stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I appreciate your concern, but I know my own household. Hargreaves is harmless. If he's asking about security, it's because he's an old man who worries. Nothing more. What if you're wrong? I'm not. Final. Absolute. The voice of a man who'd built an empire on being right about who to trust and who to eliminate. Serena recognized the wall going up between them. She'd pushed too hard, too fast. Okay, she said quietly. I hope you're right. I am. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Just watch him. Please. If not for me, then for them. Vittorio didn't answer, already back to his papers. But as Serena closed the door, she caught him glancing toward the family photo on his desk. Beatrice and the boys, frozen in a moment when trust hadn't yet been broken. The next Tuesday, Serena made a point of being nearby during the lesson. She brought fresh juice and cookies, staying longer than necessary to wipe down the already clean counter. Mr. Hargreaves was teaching pronunciation, patiently correcting Nico's accent. Les enfants sont fatigués, he said, and the boys repeated it. As the lesson ended and the boys scattered, Mr. Hargreaves packed his satchel. Serena, I've been meaning to ask, does Mr. Rinaldi still meet with his associates on Thursday evenings? I may need to adjust my schedule, and I wouldn't want to be here during sensitive discussions. There. That wrong note again, louder this time. You'd have to ask Mr. Rinaldi, she said, keeping her voice light. Of course. That smile. Have a lovely day. Serena watched him leave, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. She counted to 60, then followed at a distance. He didn't head to the front entrance. Instead, he turned toward the east wing, the one that housed Vittorio's private office and the security monitoring room. She lost sight of him around a corner. When she reached it, he was gone. But a door that was usually closed stood slightly ajar. The security room. Serena's heart hammered. She should get Vittorio, should tell someone. But by the time she did, Hargreaves would be gone, and she'd have no proof beyond suspicion and coincidence. She pulled out her phone and started recording, then pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty. The monitors showed various angles of the estate, the gates, the courtyard, the driveway. And there, on the main console, a small USB drive that definitely hadn't been there during her brief tour of the house. Serena photographed it without touching anything, then backed out of the room. Her hands were shaking. Her instincts were screaming. Mr. Hargreaves, the kindly British tutor, was stealing security data from the Rinaldi family, and Vittorio didn't believe her. The storm had been building all afternoon, turning the sky the color of old bruises. By dinner, rain hammered against the windows with enough force that Lucia kept flinching at every gust of wind. The boys were restless, their energy trapped inside by weather that made even the courtyard unusable. Serena had just gotten them settled with a movie, some animated thing about talking cars that seemed to require the volume to be set at jet engine levels, when the lights flickered. "Mama?" Lucia's hand found hers in the dimness. "It's okay, baby. Just the storm." The lights steadied, then flickered again. This time, when they went out, they stayed out. The emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. The boys erupted into excited chatter. Darkness was apparently thrilling when you were 6, but Serena felt ice slide down her spine. Something was wrong. The estate had backup generators, industrial-grade systems designed to handle power outages without this kind of delay. "Everyone stay here," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Marco, You're in charge. Keep your brothers and Lucia in this room. Lock the door behind me." "Where are you going?" Marco's bravado had dimmed slightly in the red emergency lighting. "To find your father." She was already moving toward the door. "Lock it. Don't open it for anyone except me or your papa. Understand?" Marco nodded, and for once didn't argue. Serena found Vittorio in the hallway, already moving toward the security room, with 2 guards flanking him. His face was grim, all business now. The softness she'd glimpsed in their late-night conversations completely erased. "The generators should have kicked in by now," he said without preamble. "Something's wrong. The children are safer in the media room than anywhere else right now. It's reinforced, interior walls, 1 entrance." He glanced at her. "You should be with them." "I will be. But you need to know." A sound cut through the storm. Distant but unmistakable. Gunfire. Vittorio's entire demeanor shifted. He barked orders in rapid Italian, and suddenly guards were materializing from doorways Serena hadn't known existed. The security room door ahead of them was already open, and she could see the monitors, most of them dark, showing nothing but static. The few that still worked showed the perimeter, or what was left of it. Men in black tactical gear were scaling the east wall, moving with military precision. No lights to trigger motion sensors, no alarms blaring. The security system that should have been impenetrable had been reduced to expensive decoration. "Carvelli!" one of the guards spat. Vittorio's jaw set into a hard line. "How many?" "At least 12 that we can see. Could be more." The panic room, offline. Everything's offline except emergency lights and these 3 cameras. Serena's blood turned cold. She thought of the USB drive, of Mr. Hargreaves's casual questions, of Vittorio's certainty that she was being paranoid. "It was Hargreaves," she said. Vittorio spun to face her. "What?" "The tutor. I told you he was asking questions. Last Tuesday I found him near the security room. There was a USB drive." She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and showed him the photo she'd taken. "I should have told you immediately, but you didn't believe me, and I thought, when?" His voice was dangerously quiet. 5 days ago. 5 days. He looked like he wanted to put his fist through something. "Cristo, Serena!" "I know. I'm sorry. I should have—" "Later." He turned back to his guards. Hargreaves gave them everything. Entry points, patrol schedules, system vulnerabilities. This isn't a random hit, it's a surgical strike. His mind was already moving, calculating angles. They'll try to get to the children, use them as leverage. Serena's heart stopped. Lucia. All of them. Vittorio grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to focus. "Listen to me. The media room can be locked from inside. The walls are reinforced. It was designed as a secondary panic room. If you can get them to the wine cellar beneath it, there's a tunnel. Emergency exit that leads to the garage. The Mercedes at the far end. Keys are in the ignition. Do you understand? I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving them." He was already moving, pulling a gun from somewhere, and checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. "Marco knows about the cellar. Tell him Codis Rosso. He'll understand." Another burst of gunfire, closer now. Shouts in Italian, the sound of something heavy hitting the front door. "They're inside," one of the guards reported. Vittorio looked at Serena one more time, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like regret. Like there were words he wanted to say, but no time to say them. "Go," he said. "Protect my sons." Serena ran. The hallway seemed longer than before, the emergency lighting turning familiar corridors into something from a nightmare. She could hear chaos behind her. More gunfire, breaking glass, men shouting orders. the sounds of Vittorio's world catching up to his home. She reached the media room and pounded on the door. "Marco, it's Serena. Open up!" The lock clicked. The door opened a crack, and Marco's face appeared, pale in the red light. Behind him, she could see his brothers huddled together on the couch, Lucia pressed between Alessandro and Tommaso. Serena pushed inside and locked the door again. "We need to move, now." "What's happening?" Alessandro asked, his voice small. "Your papa's handling it." She kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. "But we need to get somewhere safer." "Marco, your papa said, Codice Rosso. Do you know what that means?" Marco's eyes went wide. Then he nodded and moved to the bookshelf on the far wall. He counted 3 shelves down, pulled out a specific book, and the entire unit swung inward on hidden hinges. Beyond it, stairs led down into darkness. "Everyone grab hands," Serena ordered. "Lucia, hold on to Alessandro. Tommaso, you're with me. Marco and Nico, middle. We stay together." They formed a chain and descended into the wine cellar, the door closing automatically behind them. Above, Serena could hear footsteps, multiple sets, running, searching. And somewhere in the storm-dark house, Vittorio was fighting to keep them all alive. The wine cellar was colder than Serena expected, the air thick with the smell of aged wood and expensive bottles that probably cost more than her old apartment. Emergency lighting cast shadows that moved wrong, making every corner seem occupied by threats that weren't there yet. Marco led them through the narrow passage between racks, his small hand surprisingly steady as he navigated from memory. They emerged into what looked like a storage room, boxes stacked against walls, old furniture covered in sheets, the detritus of a family that had accumulated things faster than they could discard them. "The tunnel's through there," Marco whispered, pointing to a door half hidden behind a covered armoire. Above them, footsteps, heavy boots on hardwood, voices speaking in clipped Italian, coordinating search patterns. The children froze, instinctively understanding that sound meant danger. Serena counted heads in the dim light. 4 boys, 1 daughter, all accounted for, all terrified but holding together. She reached for the armoire, preparing to move it, when Lucia's voice cut through the silence. "Mama, someone's coming down the stairs." They all heard it then, footsteps on the wine cellar stairs, deliberate, unhurried, a single person, not the tactical team that was tearing through the house above. Serena's mind raced. They couldn't reach the tunnel without moving the armoire, which would make noise. Couldn't go back up without walking into whoever was descending. They were trapped. She positioned herself between the children and the doorway, scanning the storage room for anything she could use as a weapon. A broken chair leg, a heavy wine bottle, anything. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped just outside the doorway. "Children." The voice was familiar, warm, touched with that cultured British accent. "I know you're down here. Your father sent me to collect you. It's not safe upstairs." Mr. Hargreaves stepped into the storage room, and Serena's entire body went cold. He looked exactly as he always did. Cardigan, reading glasses, that gentle smile. But he was holding something small and black in his hand. A remote control. "There you are," he said, relief flooding his voice with perfect authenticity. "Thank goodness. Come along now. We need to get you to the—" "No." Tommaso's voice was barely a whisper, but in the enclosed space it carried. He was pressed against Alessandro, his quiet eyes fixed on the tutor, with an intensity Serena had never seen before. "Mr. Hargreaves has a special remote." Everyone froze. "What?" Serena asked. "I saw him," Tommaso continued, his voice growing stronger. "Last week, in Papa's office, he was pointing it at the computer. The screen changed when he pressed the buttons. He told me it was for his presentations. But teachers don't need remotes in Papa's office. Hargreaves's smile didn't waver, but something shifted behind his eyes. The warmth drained away, replaced by calculation. Tommaso, you misunderstood what you saw. I was simply... You're the one who turned off the alarms, Serena said, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. That USB drive, you installed malware, didn't you? Remote access to the security system. Miss Valenti. Hargreaves's voice lost its gentle quality, becoming businesslike, efficient. You're a bright woman, so I'll speak plainly. The Carvelli family is offering excellent terms for the children's safe return. They don't want to hurt them. They just need leverage to negotiate with Vittorio. If you cooperate, everyone walks away from this alive. You son of a bitch, Serena breathed. You've been with this family for 5 years, and I've been underpaid for 4.5 of them. He moved slightly, blocking the doorway completely. Beatrice was generous, but Vittorio? He treats staff like disposable assets. The Carvellis understand loyalty must be compensated properly. Marco stepped forward, his young face twisted with rage. You're a traitor. I'm a pragmatist. Hargreaves pulled a phone from his pocket. Now, you can all come quietly, or I can call my associates down here, and things become unpleasant. Your choice. Serena's mind raced through options. 5 children, 1 adult, 1 exit blocked. The tunnel was still hidden behind the armoire. If she could buy time, create a distraction. Okay, she said, raising her hands in surrender. Okay, don't hurt them. We'll come with you. Relief flickered across Hargreaves's face. He lowered the phone slightly, his guard dropping just a fraction. Serena grabbed the wine bottle she'd spotted earlier and threw it directly at his head. He ducked, but not fast enough. The bottle caught his shoulder, shattering against the doorframe. Wine and glass exploded across the floor. Hargreaves stumbled, and Serena charged. She wasn't a fighter, had never thrown a punch in her life. But she was a mother, and he was threatening her children, and that made her dangerous in ways he hadn't calculated. She hit him low, driving her shoulder into his midsection. They went down together, his phone skittering across the floor. He was stronger than he looked, his hands grabbing for her throat, but Serena fought dirty, nails raking his face, knee driving up toward vulnerable areas. "Marco!" she gasped. "Move the armoire! Get them out!" The boys scrambled into action, small hands pushing against heavy wood. Hargreaves threw Serena off, sending her crashing into wine racks. Bottles tumbled, some breaking, creating a spreading pool of red that looked too much like blood in the emergency lighting. He was going for his phone. If he called for backup, Serena grabbed a broken bottleneck and lunged again, this time slashing rather than stabbing. The makeshift weapon caught his forearm, drawing blood. He screamed, rage replacing his cultured composure. "You stupid!" He backhanded her, and stars exploded across her vision. She tasted copper, felt herself falling. Then suddenly he was pulled away, lifted bodily, and thrown against the wall with enough force to crack plaster. Vittorio Rinaldi stood in the doorway, covered in blood that probably wasn't his own, holding a gun that was pointed directly at Hargreaves's head. Behind him, 2 guards secured the entrance. "Papa!" The boys rushed to him, and he caught them with his free arm, never taking his eyes off the tutor. "The Carvellis?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. "Dead or scattered?" one of the guards reported. "We're sweeping the grounds now." Vittorio looked at Hargreaves, who was pressing his bleeding arm against the wall, all pretense of gentility stripped away. "You betrayed my wife's memory. Your wife was a fool who—" The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Hargreaves slumped, the life leaving his eyes before he hit the floor. Vittorio lowered the gun and immediately dropped to his knees in front of his sons, checking them for injuries with shaking hands. "Are you hurt? Any of you?" "We're okay, Papa," Alessandro whispered. "Serena protected us." Vittorio's eyes found hers. She was sitting against the wine racks, her lip bleeding, her hands shaking with adrenaline crash. Their eyes met. And she saw everything he couldn't say in front of the children, gratitude and guilt and something fiercer, something that looked like recognition. "You fought him," Vittorio said, his voice rough. "He threatened them," Serena replied simply. "What else was I going to do?" Tommaso broke away from his brothers and threw his arms around Serena's neck. Then the others followed, Alessandro, Nico, even Marco. 5 children pressing close, seeking comfort, offering it. And when Vittorio carefully lifted Serena to her feet, his hand lingering on her waist just a moment longer than necessary, she understood that something fundamental had shifted. They weren't employer and employee anymore. They were family. The aftermath of violence was always uglier than the violence itself. Serena had learned this in the hours that followed. As police, who clearly knew better than to ask too many questions, filed reports that would never see a courtroom. As cleaners arrived to erase bloodstains from marble floors. As the bodies were removed with efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first time the Rinaldi estate had required such services. Vittorio had disappeared into his study with men in expensive suits, their conversations conducted in low voices behind closed doors. Business, Serena understood, the kind that required immediate attention when your enemies tried to kill your children. She'd taken the kids upstairs, all 5 of them crowded into her and Lucia's room, because none of them wanted to be alone. Mrs. Chen had brought hot chocolate and bandages, tending to Serena's split lip and the bruises already blooming across her ribs with gentle efficiency. "You did good," Mrs. Chen had said quietly. "The boys, they need someone who fights for them, not just manages them." Now, hours later, the children finally slept. Marco and Alessandro sprawled across Serena's bed. Nico curled in the reading chair with a blanket. Tommaso and Lucia nested together on Lucia's bed, her daughter's arm thrown protectively over the smallest Rinaldi boy. Serena sat on the floor between the beds, her back against the wall, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Hargreaves's face, felt his hands on her throat, heard the gunshot that had ended his life. The door opened quietly. Vittorio slipped inside, still wearing the same blood-spattered shirt from earlier. He took in the scene, his sons and her daughter tangled together in sleep, and something in his expression cracked. "They're okay," Serena whispered, "because of you." He moved to where she sat and lowered himself to the floor beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "The Carvellis are dealt with. Their leadership is discussing new terms. Terms that include leaving my family alone. And Hargreaves was working with them for 6 months, since I refused to negotiate territory last spring." His jaw tightened. "I should have listened to you. Should have believed you when you said something was wrong. You loved him, or trusted him at least. That's not a weakness. It almost got my sons killed." He turned to look at her, and in the dim light from the hallway, she could see the weight of it crushing him. "You threw yourself between them, and danger without hesitation. You fought a man twice your size with a broken bottle. His voice broke. "You were willing to die for them." "Of course I was." It seemed obvious to Serena. Simple. Their children. My child was with them. What else would I do? Most people would run, would prioritize their own survival. He reached out, his fingers gentle on her bruised jaw. "You're not most people, Serena Valenti." "Neither are you," she said softly. You came back. In the middle of a war, you came back for us. I'll always come back for you." The words hung between them, heavier than he'd probably intended. "All of you." They sat in silence, watching the children sleep, proof that they'd survived, that love and luck and desperation had been enough. "I can't do this alone anymore," Vittorio said finally. "I thought I could. Thought I had to. But tonight proved that control is an illusion. The only thing that's real is," he gestured to the sleeping children, "this, family, people who fight for each other. You have that," Serena said. "You've always had that. I have employees, guards, associates." He looked at her. "But I only have one person who loves my sons like they're her own, who sees them as children instead of obligations or assets or leverage." He paused. "Stay. Not as an employee, as Vittorio, let me finish." He took her hand, his thumb tracing over her scraped knuckles. "I'm not asking you to replace Beatrice. I'm asking you to build something new with me. A family that's messy and complicated and made of choice instead of just blood. I'm asking you to stay, because when I thought I might lose you tonight, I realized I can't protect just their bodies. I need someone who can protect their hearts. And you already do that. You have since the moment you walked into that kitchen and refused to run." Serena felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I have a custody hearing in 2 weeks. You'll win it. I'll make sure of it." There was steel in his voice. "No judge will question your stability when you have unlimited resources and the best lawyers in the state. You can't just—" "I can. I will." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her damaged knuckles. "Say yes, Serena. Say you'll stay. Not because you need the job, but because they need you. Because I—" He stopped, the words too big, too soon. "Because this is where you belong." She looked at the children, at Lucia sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. At the 4 boys who'd tested her and trusted her and fought for her acceptance like it mattered more than anything. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll stay." 6 months later, the kitchen was a disaster again. Flour dusted every surface like fresh snow. Eggshells littered the counter. 4 boys in matching aprons, a gift from Serena that they'd initially refused to wear until Lucia had declared them actually kind of cool, were engaged in what could generously be called baking. "Marco, that's too much butter," Alessandro warned. "It's never too much butter," Marco argued, adding another stick to the mixing bowl. Nico was licking batter directly from the spoon, having given up all pretense of following the recipe. Tommaso carefully measured vanilla extract, his tongue poking out in concentration. And Lucia, perched on a stool beside him, read instructions from the cookbook with the authority of someone who'd appointed herself head chef. Serena stood at the stove, making actual breakfast while supervising the chaos. Her engagement ring, a simple band with a stone that had belonged to Vittorio's grandmother, caught the morning light as she flipped pancakes. She heard him before she saw him. Footsteps in the hallway, the rustle of his newspaper. Vittorio entered the kitchen, still wearing his sleep pants and undershirt, his hair uncharacteristically mussed. He'd learned over the past 6 months that Sunday mornings were for family. Business could wait. He came up behind Serena, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to the back of her neck. "Buongiorno, amore mio." "Morning," she murmured, leaning back into him. "Your sons are making cookies for breakfast again." "Our sons," he corrected gently. "And that seems perfectly reasonable to me." "Papa," Nico called, "tell Alessandro that cookies are a breakfast food." "Cookies are absolutely a breakfast food," Vittorio announced solemnly, earning a whoop from Nico and an exasperated sigh from Alessandro. The kitchen was messy. The children were loud. Flour would probably be discovered in strange places for weeks, and as Vittorio turned Serena in his arms and kissed her properly while their children made theatrical gagging noises, she realized this was what peace looked like. Not perfection, not control, not the absence of chaos, just love. Messy, complicated, chosen love. And for the first time in years, Serena Valenti was home.